Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you found my videos helpful, and if you do, please subscribe. Today I like to talk about brakes. I got a project here. It's a Suzuki SV650. This bike's got issues because it's been sitting for a few years. The bike brakes are stuck. So the brakes are working, but when you hit it, they stay on. So what I want to show you today in this video is how you fix that issue. It's really not as bad as you would think. Let's get to it. First, I want to say that this job, it's same principle no matter what motorcycle you have. If you have a dual disc brake, single disc brake, I don't care what it is, cruiser, sport bike, same deal. The reason why your motorcycle brakes are stuck is that the brake fluid, the .4 brake fluid, is corrosive. So when the motorcycle is sitting for a while, or even if the brake fluid hasn't been changed for a long time, in here inside the brake caliper there's a buildup of this crystallized brake fluid that makes it too tight, and it just stays stuck and it doesn't release the brake. Step 1, removing the calipers and leave them hanging. Now my calipers are off. Step 2 is taking out the brake pads and the mechanism that would be in the way to get to these pistons so they can pop out of the body. Now we got our brake pads out and this little bracket off, so my caliper is nice and naked. Here you start seeing how dirty these pistons are, but our main issue is inside the caliper. Now what you want to do is open this reservoir. Always turn the handlebar so the reservoir is level, so it doesn't leak out, and we're going to make sure it's full. My reservoir was a little bit low, so I'm going to add fluid. As crazy as it sounds, the reason why I need this fluid is to have enough fluid inside the system to pump all the cylinders out. I'll show you in a minute. Before I start pumping out my side that is already prepared, I'm going to pop this one back on, just because I don't want these cylinders to move and get to the point that I gotta fight the brake pads out. So I gotta put it back on just loosely, so when the brake starts squeezing, it's just gonna be the same that it is right now. So now I'm gonna simply start squeezing slowly my brake, and you can see down here the first large piston coming out. Now I don't want this piston to pop out, so I'm going to go about this far, and I'm going to prop something in between the body and the piston, so the other one is going to start coming out. So I just use this screwdriver to wedge something in between, and I'm going to start pumping. Let's see, I'm doing this one-handed, and my bottom piston is starting to come out. So now what I did, I took one of my brake pads and I just pushed it in this gap. Again, working one-handed here, but I pushed it in this gap, so when I start working on my other side, these cylinders won't come out and pop out, and I will lose my hydraulic pressure. So you leave this alone, and we move to the other side and do the same exact thing on the other side. So now took my other side apart just like before. You can see the pistons here. I'm going to let it go and start pumping. Again, top one's coming out first, right around there. Again, wedge the screwdriver, my bottom piston starting to come out. I go about same distance. So now this is when the job starts getting messy. I'm back on my first caliper. I'm going to pull this brake pad out. You can take a pliers, grab the edge of the piston, and it'll come out. with it, it'll come out all kinds of brake fluid. So that's why I said it's gonna start getting messy. I'm gonna drop that one there, pop the second one. If you scuff the very top of the piston, it's no big deal. That one never touches any sealing part even when it's pushed all the way in. So just make sure you're only grabbing the very end of it. So now this is where we're getting into the whole reason why your brakes are getting stuck. If you look at the piston itself, it doesn't really look that bad. When it's exposed to the element, of course it's got some crud on it, but inside, no big deal. But these square O-rings right there, that's where we have a problem behind. For this part, all you need is one of these picks. You come in a set of 4, and carefully go behind this square O-ring and just pop it out. There's a buildup, as little as it looks, between what's on the O-ring and what's in the groove. It will make the brakes too tight and it won't release. You can see this right there. Keep in order which one was where. On some calipers, the 2 different sizes. So, oh, this one is much worse than the one I just took off. You can even hear it. You see all this buildup? And then on the top you have these skinny ones. They're kind of like a dust seals. Alright, when you look inside here, you can clearly see the buildup. And when I start scraping it, which is the way we're gonna go about cleaning this stuff, you just take one of these picks and you just start scraping the groove to clean everything up. You can see how much stuff is on there. So what we want to do is get all this stuff out of here, and I'll be back with you in a sec. Alright guys, so I got everything cleaned up. I scraped all my grooves for the O-rings. I also took a little 220 sandpaper and I cleaned the pistons and the rings, scraped all this inside stuff off of it. So now I'm going to start putting it back together. There is no special way these go in. Doesn't matter, they're perfectly square, so they just pop in. Then you pop in your skinny one. Make sure they're nice and straight in the groove. Same with the other 2. On your hand on it, make sure everything is nice and straight in place. Then what I like to do, I like to take a little brake fluid and just make the area wet, so it'll be easier to slide in. I'm going to take my piston and make it wet as well, and you should be able to carefully just wiggle it and put it in by hand, just like that. You see the difference from before, where it was so tight that we had to Alright, so they're back in by hand, and we're gonna go ahead, do the same thing on the other side. and I'm gonna assemble this stuff all back together. And I'm not really showing the details of that. It's pretty easy, self-explanatory, but you know, every motorcycle is a little bit different. You might have a 6-piston calipers, 4-piston calipers, I don't know, but I'm gonna put this back together and we're gonna bleed the brakes and we should be good to go. Alright, our brakes are all back together, so now we're gonna get to the last part, which is bleeding the system. To bleed the brakes, most of the action is going to happen up here. If you have a vacuum pump, it's easy. You hook it up to the bleeder bolt on the bottom on the caliper, pump some vacuum, and basically suck the new fluid right through. If you don't, and not everybody wants to go to the store and buy it just for one job, what you can do is fill the master cylinder up like this. Undo the line like I just did. Make sure you don't lose the washers, and then you're gonna plug it up with your finger and just pump it a couple times, let it out, pump it a couple times, and prime the cylinder. Then I keep holding the lever in, and I'm gonna put this back together, tighten it, not too much because I gotta loosen it back up. Now I'm going to start pumping. This is going to take a while. Like I said, the vacuum pump is the way to go, but if you don't have it, this is another way for you. I actually start feeling the pressure where it's pushing the fluid in, but it's also pushing a lot of air in. So I'm going to hold it in, and I'm going to loosen it up here. You can hear the air. Closing it back up and repeat. Like I said, most of it's going to happen up here. Keep adding the fluid so you don't run out up here. It doesn't hold that much. And I put old paper towels to avoid a mess. Be especially careful if you have all your body work on the bike, because the brake fluid, if it gets on your paint, it could stain it. As you can see, the fluid is going down pretty quick, which is a good sign. That means we're filling up our calipers. When we get to the point that we start having a break, which we're getting real close to that, I can hear the calipers starting to move down there. We're gonna go down there and crack the bleeder bolts to get the excess air from the calipers. Here I like to use a piece of hose. This is from a battery, when you buy a new battery. I'm going to loosen up the pump the brake. I feel the sponginess. There's the air. The reason why you have to do it up first, because you need to build pressure in the system. If you have your system empty and try to do it down here, it's never going to happen. I'm going to move to the other side. Same thing here. Pump the system on top. First you're going to have bubbles coming out. Alright. I think this is pretty good. So this is pretty much all there is to it. I got everything closed up. The brake is working perfect and nothing's dragging. Job done. So if you are feeling intimidated by this, as you saw in this video, no matter what bike you got, it's not that difficult. Basic tools. If you take this to the dealer, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So do your own work and learn about your bike and save a bunch of money in the process. So I appreciate you watching. Hope you subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.